Hello and welcome to this StoryAidEU interview with Professor Adam Layland. Adam, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks for having me today, David. Great to be here with you.
No, it's great that you could join us. And today we're going to be talking about leadership and storytelling and also touching upon wicked problems. So the first question I have for you, which may be a difficult one, but could you define the key leadership fundamentals for me?
There's a number of fundamentals in leadership that I think are really important. I think as a leader, you need to be able to inspire people. You need to give them the ability to see the best that they can see and to be the best that they can be through that inspiration. And the way to do that is through motivating people. So it's fundamental as a leader to motivate people to want to be the best, to strive for better, or as what I use across my team about excellence. How do we get to excellence? What does excellence look like for us? And that's my way of motivating. And it's a really good way as a leader to give feedback on people. Do you feel like they're getting the best? Are they giving the best? Are you seeing the best or the excellence? And by doing that feedback, you can motivate them, you can inspire them to want to do better. But fundamentally, that comes down to how you communicate as a leader. Nowadays, we've got so many different ways to communicate, whether that's through email, through recordings, a video, through Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. There's so many ways to reach people, but you've got to be adaptable in that communication so that people receive it, that they hear it, and that they can go back to it if they want to. I often see, loads of different emails from different leaders across areas, particularly across healthcare, and sometimes there can be just way too much in it. So I think as a leader, you've got to really identify your communication style and what people want from your communication so that they're able to understand the message that you want to. And telling people stories, being a bit more vulnerable, opening up about yourself is a really good sign of a strong leader because people can start to engage with you at a completely different level. You don't become somebody at the very top of an organization, say, in the normal construct of leadership. And so it leads to my favorite quote on leadership, really, from Eisenhower, which is about leadership is getting people to do things you want done because they want to do it. And overall, for me, that is the fundamental aspect of leadership, is inspiring, motivating, and communicating well with people to get the things you want done because they really, really want to do it. And there's so many different ways to do that now. We don't need a command and control structure that has existed historically in other places. But we can build leadership across different levels of organizations, as well as seeing our leaders at the top of organizations as well. And I think it's really incumbent to understand oneself as a leader. I think that's fundamental in leadership. You need to know what motivates you, what inspires you, what keeps you going when times get tough and when times get difficult, because that's what's going to help other people get through those problems and for them to get their job done to the best standards that they want to do. So at the end of the day, human nature, we want to do our best. People don't turn up generally in a job to do a bad job. People want to do well. But the way to do well is through structure, through governance, and through really clear, strong leadership overall. I think those are the fundamentals that I can think of, David.
Yeah, a very comprehensive answer as well. So thank you for that, Adam. And I think before we move on to, you touched upon some of the elements of our StoryAidEU course actually there. But before we move on to how we join those up, I think it'd be interesting to look at wicked problems. So could you just describe what are they? And do you have any examples for people listening?
Yeah, so wicked problems, sometimes we can wrongly identify wicked problems. So wickedness is not difficulty. So wickedness is when traditional methods of solving problems just aren't going to work for the problem that we've got. Difficulty is very, very different. That comes down to sometimes complexity, and complexity is not wicked. Complexity is just a challenge overall. There's difficult things to try and do. Wickedness is when we just don't have a solution or a methodology to get to that solution, or it's inevitable, it's always going to happen. So, a few different examples that I can think of wicked problems as such is hot drinks. So if you get a hot drink, it's going to be hot. You might burn yourself. And we see across, fast food chains and what have you, there's a label on them now saying caution, contains hot liquid. It's a wicked problem. There's no solution that we can ever get to stop things being hot when we want a hot drink. Very simplistic viewpoint. The other one around wicked problems is around solar power through solar panels. And, we can't get solar power when there's no sun out. The sun goes down every day. So as a wicked problem, it can't be a full solution for something. There's a wickedness within that, which isn't difficult because it just can't be solved. There's no sun, there's no power coming through. And the other one, which a good friend of mine explained as well, was around geriatrics and the elderly. Whereas it's inevitable at some point that they will fall, whether that's through muscle wastage, joint problems. We can remove aspects of the problem by footwear, through the environment, making sure there's no trip hazards and things like that. But inevitably, the body has this within us at times where we will naturally fall as we get older. And so it's a wicked problem in that it's not difficult because we can put measures in place, but there's nothing that's ever going to stop it from happening in that regard. And so there's another example on wicked problems around terrorism. So terrorism is a wicked problem. It's something that we are really struggling to find a solution towards. It doesn't fit traditional solutions. Poverty is another example where we want to try and solve poverty, but it's a really wicked problem overall. And despite recent tweets from the world's richest man on offering to give the money to solve poverty around the world, we know that it's not as simple as just throwing money at it. So the kind of like, to some degree, the opposite of hard, but they're not easy. They're like the next opposite of hard, which is you just can't apply normal logic to solving them overall. And so not only do our conventional processes to solving problems fail to tackle those wicked problems, they actually might make the wicked problem worse through trying to tackle it in a conventional way as such. So I hope that just gives a little bit, David, on what I think of wicked problems as such.
It does. I think that was really interesting and very insightful there. So I think now moving on, you kind of mentioned the leadership fundamentals, and obviously a lot of similarities between and with our StoryAid and storytelling course. So I think my last question for you, and I think this is a very difficult one, so apologies for ending on such a hard one, but would be, how does storytelling and leadership, or storytelling principles with leaders, help to impact on those wicked problems that you've just outlined?
Thanks, David. And yeah, that's definitely difficult rather than a wicked one. But so I think the combination of leadership and storytelling to attempt a different approach at wicked problems has got a lot of usefulness overall. So talking about those fundamentals of leadership being inspiration, motivation, getting people to do things you want done because they want to do it, in the communication aspect, the way to do that is through telling a story. And that story is very personal. It could be personal about the individual as a leader, or it could be personal about the situation that they're faced with. And so for me, that's the starting point of dealing with a wicked problem. People need to understand through the information and gain the knowledge of what the actual problem is. And then what you develop through that storytelling is a picture. So people start to build a mental picture of what's going on, and then naturally people go into well, how would I solve this? It's human nature to try and solve a problem at times. So people start to go into that mode. And what you can do through storytelling, particularly with a group of people or individually or in a dispersed way, is you start to tap into diversity of thinking. And diversity of thought opened up through storytelling can start to break down wicked problems in a non-conventional way. Now, you'll always get people who come out with, well, I would solve a problem with this way. I might do the 5 whys and work out back to the beginning of why this is a problem in the first place. But we know that's not going to work with wicked problems. But what you can start to do is build a collaborative piece of that diversity of thought from the story originally, which gets people recognizing, okay, what value do I add? Where are these little solutions that we can get? And I think through storytelling, you can start to break down the wicked problem as well. So with wicked problems, you've probably got a multitude of different problems which make it wicked. But if you can break it down and tackle smaller, difficult problems, it becomes a very, very different situation. And that's where, again, storytelling can come in from a smaller, difficult problem as part of a big wicked problem, and then contribute up to that wicked problem overall. And I think it just comes down to the basics of communication. When we understand a story and we can see either a moral in a story or a purpose in a story, you then start to be able to empathize with it. And you can start to put yourself in that position, which then helps you to come up with a solution overall. And I think that's the power of storytelling. I think it's the power of leaders using that ability to inspire, to motivate, and use that as their communication tool through whatever media or method is most appropriate for them to help people get through wicked problems. There's so many wicked problems around the world that we're not going to solve all of them. But what we can do is try and help people position them in a very different light and help people cope with that wickedness overall through the power of storytelling.
Thank you very much, Adam. That was a really excellent answer. We couldn't have put it better ourselves within the project consortium. So thank you very much for the interview today. And if those of you watching want to learn more about storytelling, leadership and wicked problems, you can visit www.storyaid.eu. Thank you again and goodbye.